ഹലോ കേൾക്കാമോ? കേൾക്കാമോ സാർ?
കേൾക്കാം.
സർ. ഗുഡ് മോർണിംഗ് നദാനിൽ സാർ.
Hello.
Morning.
Yes sir. I was an interview board.
Okay. Hello sir.
Nathaniel sir, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
സുഖമായിട്ടൊക്കെ ഇരിക്കുന്നല്ലോ?
സുഖമായിരിക്കും.
You are all right.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Today you are free, I think.
Excuse me, sir?
Today you are free. Completely free.
Theresa, sir, can I just share my presentation to make sure that it works and then I'll close it? I'm just going to share my presentation just to make sure that it's working.
Yeah, surely you can. It's okay, fine sir.
It's working, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just stop sharing.
Sathiraj sir.
ഈ 2 മിനിറ്റോടെ ഉണ്ട് സാർ. 2 മിനിറ്റ്.
Sathiraj sir.
Yes sir, കേൾക്കാം സാർ.
Can we start at 11:15 sharp?
Yeah, sharp. 15 sharp. Abhijit, are you there?
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, surely. What about Surendra sir? Surendra sir is there? Ravindra sir?
Sir, I am here, sir.
Yeah. I think Surendra sir has left, no? He was here. And what about Shivadas Suprasad sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
സുരേന്ദ്ര സാർ വന്നിട്ടുണ്ട്. ജോയിൻ
Surendra sir?
Sir.
Okay. So we are all audible to you?
It's audible, please.
Okay. You are audible to us and we are audible to you.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay. Principal sir?
Yes sir, I am here.
Yeah.
I am always ready.
Yeah. രവീന്ദ്ര സാറ് സമയമായോ? 14
സമയമായി, sir.
Time ആയി.
Okay. അപ്പൊ അഭിജിത്ത്,
Sir.
we can start the program.
Okay, sir.
We'll start, sir.
Respected dignitaries, our chief guest and my dear friends, a very warm good morning everyone present here. This is a webinar organized by the Economics Department on the behalf of Mother Theresa College on the topic Post-COVID-19 World Economy, India, Opportunities and Challenges. And I'm Abhijit, one of your hosts today, and this is a matter of immense pride to be here before you all. On behalf of this institution, we are delighted to offer a gracious welcome to all of you. Like the great Danish philosopher who quoted that, the function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of one who prays. So let us begin our function with a prayer. Please remain silent and invoke Almighty for a moment, and we could progress. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Before moving forward, I would like to point out the process being followed here. The webinar is based on post-COVID world economy, India, opportunities and challenges. The duration for the whole program is 1 hour from 11:15 to 12:15. Participants will be muted during the presentation, and afterwards there will be an interactive session with our chief guest, where everyone could ask questions or clarifications through our comment section. And the qualified questions, please note that the qualified questions will be conveyed by any one of the presenters here. If anyone find any issues regarding the internet, please close the background apps from running for an efficient streaming. The session will be live streamed on YouTube due to our constraints with the platform, and the recorded one will be shared later the day on our channel. Hope you understood. Thank you. Now, a true welcome is never complete without warm words and warmer gestures. With that, I would like to invite Mr. Ravindran Sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, Mother Teresa College, to give everyone a red carpet welcome within our limitations. Please.
Respected chief guest and the main speaker of this webinar, Mr. G.V. Nathaniel, respected principal, Dr. K.M. Francis, respected heads of the various departments of Mother Teresa College, dear faculty members of Mother Teresa College and also of various other colleges, all the other participants in today's webinar. It is with a great sense of pride and happiness that I welcome each one of you to this first international webinar being conducted by the Department of Economics, Mother Teresa College, Nellikkad, Trivandrum. It is a universally accepted reality that the COVID-19 virus and the resultant pandemic has turned everything in the world topsy-turvy, or what we call upside down. It has changed everything in every manner. However, it is imperative that life has to go on, and we all are now getting used to living alongside the virus. The COVID-19 pandemic pushed the economies into a great lockdown, which helped contain the virus and save lives, but also triggered the worst recession since the Great Depression. Over 75% of countries are now reopening. At the same time, as the pandemic is intensifying in many emerging markets and developing economies. Several countries have started to recover. However, in the absence of medical solution, the strength of the recovery is highly uncertain and the impact on sectors and countries uneven. India, our great country, also has been affected very badly. It has affected the rich, the middle class, and the poor too. Honestly, it has affected each and every one of us personally too, in every manner. It is hoped that the various vaccines being developed to overcome the COVID-19 virus are expected to roll out over the coming days and weeks, and the whole world is eagerly and hopefully looking to a better, happier, and prosperous New Year 2021, which will kick in the next 20 days. Hence, we are holding this international webinar at probably the right time. And what better a topic than this post-COVID world economy, opportunities and challenges for India. Once again, on behalf of Mother Teresa College and the economics department here, a hearty welcome to each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, I would like to invite Dr. V. Surendran Nair, sir, Head of the Department of Economics, Mother Teresa College, to give the presidential address. Please, sir.
Good morning, all. Respected Principal, Dr. K.M. Francis, sir, distinguished Chief Guest, Sir Scholar Nathaniel, Coordinator of the webinar, Theresa, members of the faculty, heads of members of other faculties and other departments, then dear students and other participants. It is a prestigious moment today for the Department of Economics to host a seminar, host an international webinar on the topic post-COVID world economy, opportunities and challenges for India. As you are all aware, that all societies and all economies of the world are facing an unprecedented situation rising out of the onslaught of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has in fact amplified the existing issues and also created further and new issues to be addressed with. The prolonged lockdown and the subsequent unlock situation has demanded different strategies and programs for both survival and revival. Academicians, scientists, policymakers, international organizations, and all other stakeholders are positively responding to cope up with the situation and are coming out with clear-cut strategies and programs to combat the risk and uncertainty created by this great pandemic. Consequently, studies, research, and other academic exercises are going on throughout the world and at different platforms and at different levels to combat and resolve the situation. What we need is an integrated and multidimensional approach to solve the problems and issues created by this pandemic, because it has affected all types of people, all the masses, in terms of their livelihood, in terms of their jobs, employment, and then income. So the present seminar focuses on the global scenario, and based on this global scenario, it goes to explain and explore the possibilities that are open to India. As far as India is concerned, India is one of the countries in which the sharpest lockdown has been enforced, and that has adversely affected all sectors of the economy and all sections of the people, directly or indirectly. So millions of people have lost their lives, lost their livelihoods, and lost their income. And in that circumstance, it is highly necessary that we should also come up with strategies and programs for survival and recovering our economy from this great pandemic. Then, the success reports of the vaccine trials have come, and that has given some sort of sense of optimism for the world as a whole, and the Indian economy is also showing some signs of some symptoms of recovery. For example, the recent Reserve Bank of India estimates have come, which estimates that the GDP contraction rate has declined from 9.4% in Q1 to 7.5% in Q2. And a similar estimate has also been recently given by the Asian Development Bank, estimating it at contraction rates of GDP at 8%. So, second, in the case of manufacturing industry, there was a negative minus 39% decline of the manufacturing industry earlier, and it has come out to positive 0.6% in Q2. Then, thirdly, we have a positive effect in the stock market, the booming stock market, and also the balance of payment situation is improving, and the foreign exchange reserves are building up, and these are showing that the Indian economy is some sort in the path of recovery or revival, and it is yet to be seen whether these symptoms can be converted into sustained GDP growth rate, further generation of income, and further creation of jobs, employment, etc., so that we can completely resolve the risk and uncertainty created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Because at the same time, we also have to face certain challenges, and the challenges are in terms of, say, number one, the aggregate demand continues to be weak in spite of the huge stimulus program announced by the central government that just increased only the debt GDP ratio. It has not brought about the expected positive effects, say, in the Indian economy, because aggregate demand continues to be remain weak. Then, secondly, the 8 core sector industries consisting of natural gas, fertilizers, electricity, and the growth has declined by 2.5% in last October, comparing the period last year. And the third aspect is, in spite of the monetary control of repo rate and reverse repo rate, and holding the interest rate at lower levels, say, bank credit has not increased, but it actually declined, say, minus 0.5%, 5.1% in Q2, comparing last year, say, for the same period. So these are some challenges and some positive aspects relating to the Indian economy. Say, minor observations, say, from the first-hand information of about the Indian economy. These are not, based on these positives and negatives, we are going to assess, to what extent India can proceed and to what extent the COVID-19 risk and uncertainty can be resolved in the Indian context. This is only a passing, observation. For the deeper analysis or a deeper presentation of the problem, we go to the research scholar, Dr. Sri Nathaniel, for his presentation. And with these words, I conclude my speech and proceed to the inaugural section. I invite Dr. K.M. Francis, the Principal Sir, to inaugurate the webinar, international webinar on this topic. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite our respected principal for the inaugural speech.
Francis sir, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good morning to all. Respected Chief Guest of the day, Mr. Nathaniel. Respected Head of the Department of Economics, Dr. Surendran Nair, sir. Other department heads, dear faculty members, dear participants from other institutions, and my dear students. First of all, I take this opportunity to congratulate the head of the department and faculty members of the Department of Economics for organizing an international webinar like this. This is the 7th international webinar organizing by Mother Theresa College and the first webinar organizing by the Department of Economics of Mother Theresa College. In the welcome speech and presidential address, a very good presentation of the economy in the light of COVID presented. And due to that, I wish to make only a passing reference regarding COVID and Indian economy. Today we are discussing a very global issue which is socially relevant. Opportunities and challenges in the post-COVID situation with a special reference to Indian economy. As we all know, 2020 is a year of disruption and year of change. 2020 March was a shock to we people. Now we are at the finishing point of 2020. Now it is a high time for a shift from panic to plan. Fortunately, countries of the world are on the road of recovery. India is not an exception to this. COVID taught us many lessons. It offered many opportunities and at the same time, very many challenges. One important change that we can note is the flexible model of working. By this flexible model of working, I mean work from home. It is a new normal situation. It is an opportunity. At the same time, it itself contains certain challenges. And I like to see this work from home from the point of view of productivity. Now, in India, the problem is lack of larger houses and limited ambience. And I think this may influence the work from home and in turn the total productivity of the country. COVID helped the economy to build up digital infrastructure, and this is considered to be a plus point. Then at the very same time, our public sector banks are well capitalized, and as a result, there is outstanding response for FDI. Then another good lesson, there are so many good lessons. Another good lesson to be, which this is special mention, is the lesson of compassion. It taught the lesson, be compassionate to our fellow beings. Let us show unlimited kindness to others. The challenges in India with regard to COVID is not over. It should be properly viewed in the background of monetary policy and fiscal policy. When we view things from this background, I think we got the right person for today's presentation, Mr. Nathaniel, who is an important personnel from RBI. Now he is decorating very high position in RBI. I think he is waiting for a higher post after one interview in RBI. Let him get the highest post in RBI and let us pray for the same. He is the product of Marivanios College, and Mr. Nathaniel, we are really proud of you. Mr. Nathaniel, thanks for joining us. On behalf of the college community, I once again welcome you to this function. I wish all success to this webinar. And with your permission, I inaugurate this webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Respected dignitaries and beloved friends, we are happy to have with us Mr. G.V. Nathaniel as our today's chief guest. May I kindly request Dr. Satyaraj sir, Head of the Department of History, Mother Theresa College, and the man behind today's initiative, to introduce our chief guest to our friends and faculties.
Respected Principal Dr. K.M. Francis, sir, Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Nathaniel, dear Head of the Department of Economics, Dr. Surendra Nair, sir, and other friends and participants. With great pleasure, I take this opportunity for introducing the resource person of this international webinar, Mr. Nathaniel. So before introducing the resource person, I would like to speak a few words about our college. As you know, Mother Theresa College is a self-financing arts and science college established in 2014. And it is run by the Servo Malangara Catholic Church, having a golden track record of honoring with high recognition and reputation for governing and running Marvelous College Thiruvananthapuram, which is one of the top ranked institutions in the state and has been recently granted with the status of autonomy by the UGC and the government of Kerala. Mother Teresa College is affiliated to the University of Kerala. It offers mathematics, physics, chemistry, economics, English language and literature, Malayalam and mass communication, and BCom in the UG level. As a reward for the meritorious service in the university and the results produced in various examinations, University of Kerala recently sanctioned English language and literature in the PG level. Again, appreciating the outstanding performance of our NSS volunteers and program officer, the University of Kerala sanctioned an additional NSS unit for the college. So we have launched some new generation add-on courses. Dear friends, we are really on the way to elevate Mother Teresa College to the status of an international institution. Every year, we get top ranks in the university examinations. Regarding the staff, I would like to say that 40% of our faculty are retired professors who have been working in reputed colleges, both aided and government. Regarding the remaining 60% teachers, they are well qualified and experienced. With great confidence, we are preparing for the NAC accreditation by 2021. For the knowledge of those who are hearing about this college for the first time, I suggest you can visit our website at mtc.ac.in. And today, we are very proud to have Mr. Nathaniel, an alumnus of our mentor college, Marvelous, as a resource person. G.V. Nathaniel is currently a doctoral scholar at Vancouver School of Economics, University of British Columbia, Canada. He is now on deputation from the Department of Economic and Policy Research, Reserve Bank of India. He has also held positions at the International Monetary Fund as a visiting scholar and Bank for International Settlement as an external expert. At the RBI, he was part of the core team which developed macroeconomic model, which is used for policy analysis and simulation. He has published research papers on inflation and macroeconomics, both in national and international journals. He is a recipient of a number of awards and recognitions, including the David George Fellowship for Academic Excellence at the University of British Columbia and Governor's Gold Medal for excellent performance at the RBI and RBI's Golden Jubilee Fellowship. We are so happy to have your presence, sir, and with great happiness and joy. And I invite you to deliver the keynote address. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And it is a great pleasure and honor for me to be with you all, with respected Principal Dr. Francis, sir, whom I look up to as a mentor, and all of you who have joined the seminar. And it is wonderful to see the way, the perfect way in it is organized and everything is put in place, and an academic environment for discussing about an issue which is very pertinent, which is very important at this point of time. And I congratulate the college, and I also express my gratitude for inviting me for this lecture. Before starting, let me just say a couple of words. One is about the place that your college is very close to me, because most of you will not know, I did my schooling in and around the place where your college is situated. I studied in Korniur, which is near Puachel. I studied in Payard, which is also near your place. So I'm from the place where you guys are. So I studied around like the schools that you have studied. So that is something which I feel like going back to the roots where I came from. And the other thing is about, I have to say a word about Francis, sir, because I remember when I joined for pre-degree way back in the 90s, he was the first one, perhaps, to tell me that you have a knack or a bent of mind for understanding economics better, so you should think of it as a career. And that was the turning point in my life in terms of thinking about economics as a career or as a career economist. So that is something which I always remember with a lot of gratitude, and it is so happy to share an event where he is inaugurating the event and I'm getting to speak, and I consider it as a great privilege. Before I start my presentation, let me make this disclaimer that I'm speaking today as a personal capacity, as a researcher, and not as a representative of the RBI. So any view that I say here is purely as a personal researcher and cannot be attributed. And this discussion has to be thought of as a private discussion. So with these words, let me just start with my presentation. And I'm so glad that the speakers who spoke before me in the introduction and also the inaugural address has highlighted some of the things that we are going to discuss today. And basically what we are in is a year of 2020, nobody thought would be like this. 2020, everybody had plans, and come March, all the plans went undone. And then we are now discussing about how the world has changed forever. And then, how our lives have impacted, how we have changed the way we look at things and all that. So in this context, we are having this seminar. And what I'm going to talk about today is about how the world economy has changed because of COVID, and what are its implications for India. And so we hear a lot about India. I was just thinking that Indian economy, what is happening to growth, what is happening to different sectors, and all those things we hear a lot. So what I was thinking of focusing is about the large trends in the global economy that is happening, and then how are we going to be affected by these trends. So I would not be talking so much about India. Already we heard about the problems and also the opportunities from Surendran sir in a detailed manner, and that is already a very good background for us to understand what we are going to discuss about. So basically, I'm going to talk about how the post-COVID world economy is likely to be, and what are the opportunities and challenges for India. Let me just start sharing my presentation. All right. So what do we have? As of today, we have more than 1 million people who have died because of this pandemic, and it has actually crossed more than 1.5 million. The global GDP has contracted by about 4.3%. That means that, what was produced last year, you have about roughly 5% of that is gone this year, which has huge implications for welfare. And then just because of this pandemic, we have 130 million people, roughly 13 crore people, have become poor just because of the pandemic, partly either because they've lost their jobs or they've lost their support, or because of the lockdowns, they could not get to sell their produce. But globally, what we have this from UNCTAD is that this is a shock that we have not seen since the Great Depression, as was pointed out in the introductory remarks. So we are at a situation currently where the global economy has got a shock which was completely unexpected. And if you can think of the previous shocks and recessions, most of it, say, for example, the financial crisis of 2008-9, you can think of that as a result of an economic activity. But what we have here is a completely exogenous shock, something which is outside the system, and the system was not prepared. So that's where we are. Even though that is the background in which we are in, we should also look at what was the world economy before this shock hit us. I want to kind of spend a couple of minutes on 3 mega trends that we have as the precursor to what happened to global economy before the COVID hit. The first one is, since the 1990s, China has emerged as a center of global manufacturing. As of 2018, we have about 28% of the global output in manufacturing being done by China, which means that the entire supply chain of the world was driven by the cheap labor, which moved from the rural areas to the urban areas in China, providing them the comparative advantage in terms of pricing lower, and therefore you had this China-centric global supply chain. And then the other thing that we have is that the financial crisis of 2008-9, the students of economics would know a lot about it, that led to a huge fall in the output in the advanced economies, which led to knock-on effects on the emerging economies. And then we had a very slow recovery from that. So it's like we are looking at a patient who had a major disease episode and recovering and gets hit with another infection. So that's the kind of effect that the global economy faced. And behind all this, you had a third important thing, which was the rise of digital economy and the decline in competition. And as we would know, that 20 years ago, internet was hardly a thing in our life. And today, if you don't have internet, you feel like you don't have water in your life. So if you take the big 5 companies, the Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and the big 5 companies, they have taken most of the output of the digital world. You cannot keep them away. So what we have here is that the digital economy has grown, and it has become extremely concentrated in a few big tech 5 firms. So what we have is basically a concentrated global supply chain, a very nascent economy, and a concentration in the economic power in the digital space. Now, we were like this, and we got hit with the COVID crisis. And what happened? Most of the economies went into recession. In this graph, I have plotted, I'm just showing this graph about how the different parts of the world got affected. And you would see that barring a few countries in Africa and China, which has managed to hold on to some growth, you would see that the entire globe has been subject to this shock. So the shock has not just been at one place, the countries which tried with the lockdown, no lockdown, different strategies, but one outcome has been uniform, that the economic impacts have been so huge. So it is not just because the lockdown has had an impact on economic outcome, but also because that, the people have started behaving differently because of their response to the risk of virus. So that led to a major recession, and this recession is the sharpest since we have seen the Great Recession of 1930s. So what is the very immediate outlook that we have is that the global output, which had fallen by about 4.4% is expected to fall by 4.4% in 2020, is likely to recover somewhat in 2021, but we are not going to reach a level where we can say that the crisis is behind us. So as you can see on the left side of the graph, you would see that the recovery is not going to keep us go back to our previous levels of growth that we were seeing. So now what is the implication for this in terms of outlook for even a global economy? So this is a graph from the latest World Economic Outlook of the International Monetary Fund. What we have here is on the black lines tells you how much on an average the economies, AEs are advanced economies, EMDEs are the emerging economies, and the LICs are the least income countries. How much did they grow on an average in this 5-year period, and how much they are likely to grow in the next 5 years? So in January, when there was no COVID, we see that the blue lines were much higher than what was the average performance in the last 5 years. So we were expecting to do much better, and emerging economies were going to grow much faster. But then come crisis, we see that everybody, barring the low-income countries, are going to underperform what they have done in the last 5 years. So remember, these 5 years, the last 5 years were the years in which we were having already a very slow recovery because of the coming out of the crisis. Now you're going to be even weaker. And also that if you see the difference between the blue bars and the red bars, the difference is smaller, which means that the emerging economies are not going to catch up with the advanced economies at the rate that we expected previously. So basically, one of the outlooks that we have from the global economy perspective is that we are not going to see a recovery or we are not going to see an outcome that we wanted to see just before COVID. So that is something which, so the other thing is that there is this great concern about inequality. So I'm going to, put a few graphs here. The first graph, which is like the two graphs on the blue, is since 1990, when economies exhibited, this is the period up to 2018. So when the economies exhibited very high growth, what happened to inequality? Because growth just doesn't matter if inequality increases and the growth gets concentrated in a few in the hands of few individuals. What we see is that inequality had actually worsened in countries like India, China, and most of the developed world when the growth had actually picked up. Now, what is one of the worries post-COVID in the global economy is that you might have this inequality perpetuated by what has happened to, say, like work, as Francis was saying about work from home, can have its impact on inequality. Say, for example, I have just plotted a graph from one of the studies that were quoted in the IMF World Economic Outlook, where they show that what is the extent of the population who can do work from home by income quantiles in emerging economies and advanced economies. What we see is in both emerging economies and advanced economies, the poor, which is below 20%, only about 10 to 15% of them will be able to work from home, which means that the global change in the way work happens is going to negatively impact or going to have a deleterious impact on the poor. Whereas if you look at the rich or the highest above 80% income earners, you see most of them are able to work remotely or telework, which means that the change that is happening because of COVID-induced shock has a risk of perpetuating income inequality, which is something which we need to be aware of. So this is basically the global outlook and what we see in terms of the growth. We have a lag in catch up and inequality. We have an issue of COVID-induced change leading to perpetuation of inequality. Now, even though I'm not going to discuss a lot about impact of pandemic on India, I just wanted to kind of highlight the fact that some of this was already discussed in the inaugural address and introductory remarks. What we had is that India also had a major fall in our GDP, and as was pointed out, we have recovered somewhat. You would see on the right side, we can see this, that there was a recovery somewhat that was happening. And the forecast is that we might go through recovery before tapering off to our long-term growth. But what we have lost here, it would take a long time to catch up. So, and you would also have to remember that, so this graph is like we were going from 8 to 5%. And if you remember the discussions about, India's economic growth is becoming below 5% and all, now we have forgotten that. So we were already on a slowing of growth path. And then on top of that, we got hit. So things are very, very hard to look here. Now, if you look at the unemployment rate, what happened was that it went up to 25%. This is a CMI data, but then unemployment rates have come down. But, we cannot take so much of heart in unemployment rates, because if people don't work, they're going to starve and die. So I don't know what kind of employment they have gone back to. And because we see that the output has fallen so much, and we also know that the consumption expenditure fell much sharper than even the fall in GDP, which means that people have lost their income, which means the going back or fall in unemployment rates because either some people have moved out of the labor force or because that people have gone into distress induced, like, selling by the roadside or stuff like that. Okay, so this is what we have in terms of what is happening to India. Now, let me just go to a few major developments in the post-COVID global economy, give you some of the highlights, and then we would see what are its implications for India and an emerging economy moving forward. The first thing is that one of the things that is going to happen to the global economy post-COVID is that international trade and globalization is not going to be the same in a post-COVID economy. One of the things in the first chart, which is the left top one, plotted the trade trends. So what we can see is that before the global financial crisis, trade was growing at a much faster rate. Had we grown at that rate, we would have reached much higher level. But global financial crisis has made it lose steam. And then COVID has made it lose steam even further. There could be a number of reasons. One is that over-reliance on a particular country for entire supply chain, COVID has made it realize that that is too risky. So every country is trying to go for some part of domestic production. Two is that the countries have strategically started manufacturing stuff, expanding, completely. So one thing is that. The other thing is that the trade in itself got stuck because of the stop in economic activity. So you have, going forward, this protectionist tendencies are likely to persist. The other thing that has happened is that the global FDI inflows have fallen by about 40%. That is the second graph on the top that you see, that the capital flows have fallen very much. If you think about the fall, it was on top of a 60% fall that we saw in the global financial crisis times. But then the thing to remember is that most of the countries in the advanced economies have had a huge increase in debt and money creation, which means that there's a lot of money, which is at zero interest rates, lying around in the global economy. So as you can see that this forecast is, a very large, wide one. We can say that going forward, FDI flows are going to be very volatile. We may not be able to understand what is the nature, and any sign about recovery, you might get huge flows. You might think that that is good for the economy, but you might find out that that also has its own problems. Now, capital flows become increasingly uncertain. And another problem would be remittances. So remittance inflow to low-income countries have fallen significantly. And for countries like India, it is even more difficult because what happens is that we know that, most of you are in Kerala, so you know how much of the role that remittances play in Kerala's economy. And you know that this fall in remittances is going to have serious welfare effects. So these are the basic, likely impact that, the negative impacts. But, when we come to the end of the session, I'll also talk about some of the opportunities that we might have, because in the global economy, because there is a need for a diversification of supply chain, you would have, more countries looking for more destinations for import. And therefore, India can benefit because there is a movement away from concentration to one country, which is China. You can also have new forms of exports happening because the nature of work has changed, the nature of production has changed. So you might have more services exports happening. You might have more, knowledge-intensive goods exports happening. So therefore, we can benefit from that. So those are the things. But the major challenges that we would see is external demand to remain low because we might find it difficult for even to export. Volatility in capital flows could create further problems. And then you would also have fall in remittances creating welfare impacts. Now, the other thing is I want to briefly mention is about the pandemic and commodity prices. So global commodity prices fell more so for energy prices. So energy prices were the prices that fell the most. And it is expected that the energy prices will remain low in the medium term. And low oil prices could be a benefit for India because India is a huge importer of oil. But on the other hand, a low oil price means that India's remittances destinations would have serious output effects, like in the entire Middle East, barring countries like Dubai, which is try to diversify. Their entire income is based on oil income. And if there is going to be a perpetual lower oil price, you would have significant fall in remittances, and return migrant issues and all could be very significant. So that is something which comes up as a challenge because of the trends in commodity prices. Now, let me just also move to one of the other things that briefly our respected principal pointed about work post-COVID. So there's going to be a change in the nature of work organization. And it is not that technology was not work. It was just that the path dependency that people had so much of infrastructure, like human beings don't really like a lot of changing around. So, and companies didn't really believe how much productivity would change. So now post-COVID, the kitchen, living room, work, everything has become one. Now, that's what, I found this very interesting picture on the internet, so I just put it up, So what we have is there is a movement of work from workplace to home. And as I mentioned earlier, who can do that is also very, very, very important. It is not the low-income people who can do this. It is usually the professionals who have already safety nets who can handle this. Now, this made many people call the recovery would be something a K-shaped. Professionals going up the ladder, everyone else going down the ladder in terms of their economic welfare. And then that's what does the K-shaped recovery means. So some jobs will be lost forever. Say, for example, like, you may not have so many office assistants in a post-COVID world because we have already realized that we can live without office assistants, that many office assistants. There will be new jobs created, jobs which cater to work from home factors, jobs in terms of delivery, online delivery, and there would be some increased demand for some of the existing jobs. And the work from home in itself changes where the worker can be. Say, for example, like a good math teacher in India can now teach a kid in Canada or the US. So that means that there is going to be a lot of work which is going to move around the world because people have already realized how work can be organized even without physical presence, especially for services. So that is going to give a huge advantage in that sense. So it brings both a challenge and a huge opportunity for India. Now, but this work from home and this change in work also again has an impact on inequality. So if you look at the US, which is the leftmost chart, this is the employment trends, employment rates by salary across the pandemic. We don't have such data in India, so that's why I'm using the US case, and I don't think we would be any different. And you see that the recovery, both employment rates were similar before the crisis, that pandemic hit. But then we see that the fall in employment was very large for the low wage workers, very small, and the recovery to COVID levels have only happened in the case of high wage workers. And you know that will create inequality. On the other hand, if you look at what kind of jobs were most impacted, this graph tells you that the most impacted jobs are the black ones, which are female-dominated jobs, which were impacted more. And only in case of real estate, business, and administrative services, we see that the male-dominated jobs are impacted less. So what we essentially see is that the kind of jobs that are going to disappear are going to give a negative advantage for women, because the jobs that were earlier done by women are the ones which are most at risk post-COVID world, which means that, in terms of policy, you would have to think about what kind of welfare that it's going to create, what kind of support systems are going to be there, needs to be there, so that this does not lead to further gender inequality. So that is one of the challenges that we would have when we are in a post-COVID world. So perpetuation of inequality is a very high risk that we have at this point of time. Due to the shortage of time, let me just move forward quickly. The other few things that I want to highlight is that in terms of fiscal policy, what we are going to have is a huge global debt burden. You can see that, borrowing as a share of GDP in most countries have gone through roof. The rates that we have not seen in any time in our recent memory. So who will pay for this debt? This is either are we going to... So if you remember, the Great Recession also led to a large increase in debt in almost all countries. But then what happened was that the post-First World War economy, there was an industrialization happening, there was more output, and the generation that came after the recession produced so much of output, and the global economy grew much faster, making them take care of the debt. But then in the post-COVID world, we do not have such avenues left for us. Our recovery is going to be much slower. So how will the economies, and not every economy has the same capacity to service its debt, because some of the countries like India, we have structural problems in terms of, debt servicing, that we cannot run the levels of debt that advanced countries run, because then we would have external sector issues. So there would be asymmetric impact on different economies also. So this debt burden is going to be one of the issues that we are going to be facing quite significantly when we go through the global economy. Finally, this is one of the important, interesting issues, is that we are going to live in a regime of a very low interest rate. Interest rates are likely to remain low for a very extended period of time. This is the market expectation about how many years in the US interest rate is going to remain near the zero lower bound. That is like around zero at the rate at which the US Federal Reserve lends to the banks. We see that market expects at least for 3 years interest rates in the advanced economies are going to be literally zero or negative. What does that mean for countries like India? That very low return for capital and a lot of money from the debt, and also the expansion of central bank balance sheet that has happened. Most central banks have, the total amount of money that was printed by the US, UK, Euro area, and Japan in itself is about $3.8 trillion US. That's huge money. and huge money is sitting with literally zero interest rate. And then what will happen is that there will be massive capital flows in and out. Any capital flow has its own management issues. If a lot of capital flows come in, then we have exchange rate appreciation, and if you intervene, then you have the monetization that will lead to further inflation. So you have that problem. If capital flows suddenly go out, then we have volatility in exchange rate. That becomes, so that creates a constraint on domestic monetary policy. So inflation in India is currently higher than the target that we have for the time being, but then we expect it to come back. But if inflation becomes persistent, we cannot really increase interest rates, because then what happens is that this global capital would come in, then it will create an offsetting effect. So interest rates, global interest rates being very low, and a very high saving rate, because when crisis hit, the first response of everyone is to save up everything, so that, because we don't know what's the tomorrow going to be. So that's something which is very challenging as we see when we move forward. So basically, I have tried to cover what is the likely impact from the trade channel, what is the likely impact from the commodity price channel, what is the likely impact from the change in work, the implications of large government debt and interest rates. Let me just give you an outlook and summary before I close. I know that we're short of time. The opportunity for India would be greater trade in services and in demand for health workers. We could have, as I said, trade diversification opening up new markets. Vaccine production networks could create new linkages, like the Serum Institute is going to be like the global laboratory which will be producing most of the vaccine. So these vaccines, these linkages could help us. The challenges is that we now have to forget about the double-digit growth that we used to talk about a few years ago. Inequality concerns, some of which I have highlighted. And then some of the sectors like tourism and remittances are going to be hit in the near term, and there would need to be a need for rebalance to the domestic economy so that we are much more resilient when, hopefully not, if we are faced with another problem in our economy. So basically, this is what I kind of try to put together. And I know this is not exhaustive, but I try to give you a perspective from a global economic perspective. How do we stand at this point of time? And thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your deep intellect and experience on the subject with us. Now, I guess is the time that most of us have been waiting for, the interactive session. Participants could either unmute and ask the questions directly with our guest, or post it on the comment section so that we could convey it to him. Hope that we could use this session wisely, and thank you.
Participants can ask questions. So one comment has come that your talk is certainly optimistic. Can you comment on it?
There is no better day to be optimistic than today, because today most of the advanced countries have kind of made sure that they have approved the vaccine. So what we are going to see now is it's a matter of when rather than if, because 6 months ago we were talking about whether we would have a vaccine. Now the question is about whether we would have a vaccine. It's not about whether we would have a vaccine. How, by when this pandemic is going to be end. So definitely, because what we have is, I would say, a global economy which was hit by an external shock, and the fundamentals haven't really changed because the fundamental factors remain the same. And whatever has changed could be for the better. Say, for example, productivity could go up because there is a reorganization production. So there is need, hope for, 2021 is definitely not going to be a 2020 that we experience.
Please stop presenting. Abhirami, Anu, you are all present, stop presentations. The participants stop presenting. Sir, another question has come. I have heard a new term, vaccine tourism. How can it affect economy of a country? Once again, I remind all the participants to stop presenting while the resource person is speaking.
All right, so vaccine tourism would, happen only if a country is going to give vaccine to foreign nationals on arrival. And as of now, I do not see that as a national priority for most governments. The priority is to give vaccine to the residents. And most countries already have agreements with the companies which are developing vaccines. So maybe in a year or 2 years' time, when the cost of vaccine would be a factor in deciding whether to get or not, you might go to a country which can give you vaccine at a lower cost. But in the near term, we do not expect that vaccine tourism would be a major factor because you have because most countries would prefer their nationals.
So Sajana has asked another question. So please elaborate more on impact of COVID on women-dominated jobs globally and what's the outlook?
Okay, so what has happened is that in the economy, what you have is there is a gender segregation of jobs. So there are jobs which are thought of as most suited for women. Whether it is right or wrong is a different question. But then what happens is that, say, for example, office assistant jobs. These are the jobs which are most likely to not to come back once we go back to a post-COVID world where everything is normal. So for if I may have to kind of tell you what kind of jobs they are, say, for example, accommodation and food services, you would have a lot of automation happening in restaurants so that you limit interactions. Wholesale and retail trade, you're going to go online. So that in retail business, so you go to textile shops, most of the people who are employed are women. Education, a lot of teachers are there. Now, we don't know, maybe the best teacher in the world would upload a video which might lead to loss of job for many teachers. So what would then happen is that these kind of jobs are going to disappear, and women will have, already has a disadvantage in terms of what kind of jobs they can go, because the society has not evolved for equal opportunities. And then what you have is that, the jobs that earlier were accommodating them are going to disappear. So that's going to create kind of, a disproportionately large negative impact on labor market outcomes for women. I hope I have kind of. That's what.
Any more questions on the side of the audience? I mean, participants? So if there are no more questions, then we can move to the next program.
Sir, I would like to ask a question. We have a much more unorganized sector in many metropolitan cities like Bombay, like the dabbawalas, taxiwalas, whose whose job requires close proximity to the one who needs work. So the COVID-19 has impacted a lot to those unorganized sector. And how could we refurbish the human resources in other sectors? Because in this time, no one needs close close space between them. So how could we reallocate their human resources?
A couple of things. One is it's very challenging because who is going to lose the job because COVID has reduced close proximity and all. It is definitely going to be challenging. And who can retrain themselves into a different jobs? If you think about, say, for example, taxi drivers. Now, like in big cities, everybody wants to have their own car because they don't want to expose themselves to virus by traveling in a shared transportation. Taxi drivers, can they really retrain themselves and become online teachers? Not really. So this is really a challenge. But one thing which we can think of is that we were talking about say, for example, dabbawalas and stuff like that. Like so these are basically like network based jobs. Like you need a proper work, and those kind of jobs are coming up also. Say, for example, Amazon delivery or online delivery, restaurant delivery. So these are the things which have come up because of COVID. Now, you could see a lot of parallel between the kind of works that are lost and the works that are coming up. But then the thing is that can the same workers retrain themselves and come up? Or are we going to have a different set of workers taking up that job? And that's where the real challenge is.
Okay, sir, thank you.
One more question is here. That is, after Russia coming up with Sputnik, which makes other nations to rush the pace, do you think that this would have cut down trials and will that affect vaccine in its quality in any way? I think you can see the question on the chat.
Yeah, I just saw that. Unfortunately, I'm not an epidemiologist, or I do not have much idea about how vaccines work, and I don't know is the honest answer that I have for this. Because everybody has an opinion about vaccines, and sometimes it's better like to leave it to the people. And I believe that countries would not compromise on their people's lives, because if you compromise and develop a vaccine that is not effective, tomorrow you're going to find that out. So therefore the risk is too high. But I'm not sure, and I don't know this thing of what I would say, because if it's something about the economy, then I would perhaps have an idea.
Thank you, sir. Any more questions? I think that's it, so that we could move to the next session. I was quite sure this was a highly productive one, and gratitude is the fairest blossom which springs from the soul. As we come to the close of our webinar, I invite Mr. Shivprasad sir, Assistant Professor, Economics, Mother Theresa College, to propose vote of thanks.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Respected Principal, Honorable Chief Guest, respected HODs, teachers, students, and other delegates. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose vote of thanks on this occasion. As all good things come to an end in life, so is the webinar. I take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar. At the outset, I thank of our chief guest and resource person, G.V. Nathaniel, Doctor Scholar at the Vancouver School of Economics, University of British Columbia. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for his deep insight into the fresh and emerging topic, post-COVID world economy, opportunities and challenges for India, and revelation of some find. In this discussion, he has mentioned, or he has drawn the picture of the global economy from 1990 till date. He has mentioned the dominance of Chinese economy since 1990 and financial crisis of 2008-2009. He has also highlighted the emergence of digital economy. He has mentioned the post-COVID impact on the global economy, especially the fall in global output, concern about widening inequality, fall in consumption expenditure, unemployment decline, trade decline, increase in debt, remittance in low-income countries, and he has also mentioned the fact that we are living in the midst of declining interest rate and increasing saving rate. So I particularly liked his speech and the way in which he explained the subject was extraordinary. And the points he mentioned were really informative. So once again, I would like to thank Mr. Nathaniel for taking out time from his schedule and enlightening us with knowledge. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank all the organizing teams, especially Dr. K.M. Francis, Principal, Mother Theresa College, Dr. V. Surendra Nair, HOD Economics, Dr. Satyaraja, HOD History, other HODs, Mr. Arun A.L., Assistant Professor Physics, Mr. Alex, Librarian, and other teachers, staff members, students, and other delegates for participating in this webinar and making this event success. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ajit, you can go to the next.
So there is one more question being asked. Is it okay? Is it okay, sir?
If it is okay for the resource person, then we can finish with it.
I think I will give a written reply. Let's forward, go with the program.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, sir. Let's move to the next session. The end of the story is the new beginning of many others. On this note, let's conclude a remarkable, memorable, and knowledgeable session. On behalf of this institution, we sincerely thank our dignitaries for being with us this noon and enlightening us with their valuable remarks. I shower my heartfelt gratitude to the professors, participants, chief guests, and everyone here for their wholehearted support rendered in the success of this webinar. And before that, I kindly request all the participants to fill the Google feedback forms. Link is provided in the comment section so that e-certificates shall be provided to you. Thank you. Now, everyone please remain silent and honor the national anthem.
Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha, Kaveri.
Thank you everyone for their valuable participation.